Okay, let's have a concrete example of a ruthless strategic crush which occurred recently, actually, in the last round of Hastings. An international master with the black pieces, Simon Ansell, who I happened to play against recently in the London Classic. Anyway, he was up against Andrei Istratescu, who's 2-6-2-4, so a grandmaster, higher rated. But let's see how the grandmaster played from a kind of strategic crush viewpoint. Because I think there was just so little counterplay in Black's position. This game actually became cited on the ChessBase site in one of the reports, and we'll look at the disaster which happened positionally then, right from the opening. But I think Simon he's played this opening for quite a while, but it does feature the Boleslavsky hole because he's played that e5. So Black's got a more fixed structure already at the opening. Maybe White had prepared this particularly cunning line, which seems to emphasise Black's dark square weaknesses quite a lot, and trying to get rid of this light squared bishop later on with this kind of manoeuvre. Because this potentially is a strategic disaster, but getting there, requires some precision. So knight a3, b5. So it's not mainline Sveshnikov lines with knight f6. It's a very early b5 without knight f6. But White plays knight d5 anyway. Now knight f6. So if White wanted to, he could actually play bishop g5 to get a Sveshnikov transposition. But he leaves the bishop at home for the moment. He plays c4, which is becoming a trendy idea in the Sveshnikov lines. So b4. With this, well, the queen side pawns are more secure, and maybe Black can get c5. But on the other hand, this knight rerouting to e3 is handy for d5 and f5 control. So knight takes f6, queen f6, and instead of the routine knight c2, this is what I mean by precision. If you're going to implement strategic crush, sometimes finding precision resources to make sure the opponent hasn't got much counterplay. And here, well, maybe knight c2 is okay according to Rybka as well. In fact, in the game, queen d5 was played, so that's quite an interesting innovation. So Black played bishop d7 to support that knight. And now knight c2, and we're starting to see the seeds of a strategic disaster here. And in terms of the thought process of the White player, of course I can't prove anything about the thought process of the White player because I didn't play the game. But I think I hypothesise that at the back of the mind is this notion of playing simple chess, avoiding the tactical complications, trying to reduce Black's counterplay, and in particular a light square strategy will feature in this, trying to get rid of this light squared bishop, trying to tie Black down completely with his own structure, imprisoning his pieces, like this bishop in particular, to be a prisoner of this structure. So we'll see that developing over the next few moves. So bishop e2, and now this key move h3 to support an early bishop g4. We've seen these things before, even in my blitz games. Now b3, locking down Black's b3 potential counterplay. Bishop e7, now bishop g4. So the first stage to get rid of that light square bishop. So this is, you could say this is part of strategic crush. White's really just emphasising the dark side of this pawn structure with the light square weaknesses. Bishop e6, now queen d1, supporting the bishop from d1. Castles. And I'm not sure Black, he's discouraged to play f5 here. If f5, maybe, okay, Rybka's giving like this line where queen d5 again would be annoying, apparently. Now maybe in this position White just stands better with bishop b2. Okay, let's not get too far into that. In the game, Black actually took on g4, and White just offered, the exchange of queens, and he doesn't mind doubling his pawns because it really restrains Black's counterplay with f5. But Black didn't exchange queens here. After a5, rook d1. Now knight d8, we start to see this passive knight. Where is it actually going? Or maybe it can go like this, but knight e3. Now here, Black decided to take on g4 because this move apparently is not good at all, according to Rybka. Knight f5, and say Queen c7, knight h6, knight takes f7. So this is very dangerous, actually, trying to just win material. So using this f5 square. So tactics are emerging in this game, of course, and they kind of mean that routine moves can be punished. Let's say king h8 instead. Then knight e7 is just losing the bishop. So that's why black has to do something about that knight f5. Queen c7. Again, we have that knight h6 line. So anyway, in the game, black decided maybe that's why black took after knight e3 on g4. So hg4. So we're reaching this position where really the strategic crush is emphasised. Okay, so yes, there were some variations to calculate, and White was probably aware of a lot of the tactical variations there, but he's still trying to, keep black's counterplay minimal. And now he's just quietly opening up on the queen side soon with a3. Now that these pawns are fixed, in particular b4, because he's fixed it with b3, he can pill with a3. So we still start to see the signs of a total positional disaster now, a3. Because White's built up, some trump cards already, and is just further increasing his advantage, which is, Steinitzian theory. You just increase and increase your positional advantage, and then if you go for an attack, it should be undefendable. We're going to look at Steinitz, actually. I promised to look at Steinitz, but this is a good precursor to Steinitzian theory about building up positional advantages. So here, black's really under control. He's got a lifeless sort of position, and White now is about to play a finishing combination, believe it or not. So bishop takes c5, immediately wins a pawn, and the end is really close. b4, and the bishop's also running out of squares, sort of prisoner of its own structure, and also White's rook activity is menacing. And here White just played a neat combination just to finish off the game. Can you see it if I give you 5 seconds starting from now? Okay, he played rook takes d6. So after takes, he just simplifies into a winning king and pawn ending with rook takes b6 here. Because if takes, then c5. This is just the winning king and pawn ending. So what can we see from this game? I mean, there were variations behind the scenes, but there's a certain fluency which pervades White's play, that he really knew what he was doing strategically, and in terms of minimising black's counterplay. In particular, minimising black's counterplay, offering the exchange of queens, and we get just this white square disaster, really, when knight e3 does threaten horrible things like this check and knight takes f7. So that routine knight e6, which would question actually White's d4 weakness, didn't seem to work out tactically, and so this plummets black into a worse position if he has to exchange off queens. And then, really, this knight's not able even to use c5 without the risk of being exchanged off. So really, White's play is remarkably, simple looking, and he does exchange on c5 to leave, this better knight versus the bishop, and he's won his first pawn, and now he just exchanges off into a winning king and pawn ending. So there's an elegance behind the whole game, and I think it's an example of a strategically driven game, minimising counterplay, keeping to simple chess, just a sort of riskless kind of win. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.